Have you ever felt like maybe you're living your life a bit too much for other people? Always kind of looking for their approval or needing guidance for, well, pretty much everything.
It's a really common feeling, that sense of being pulled by external expectation.
Right. It can feel heavy, like you're trying to follow a map someone else drew for you. But imagine just for a second what it would feel like to be truly free.
Free to set your own course.
Yeah, exactly. To live life completely on your terms. Tapping into this inner strength, maybe one you didn't even know was there.
That shift from relying on the outside world to finding direction inside, it's incredibly powerful when it happens.
It speaks to something deep, doesn't it? Wanting to be authentic. But it's definitely a path lots of us struggle to actually find.
It's not always straightforward.
Absolutely. And that's what brings us to our deep dive today. We're exploring a really fascinating source. It's a book summary called Mastering Self-Reliance and Living Authentically.
And the description itself is pretty compelling. It says this material can completely flip the scales.
Flip the scales. I like that. It suggests a big shift in perspective.
Yeah.
So our mission here is to really unpack this summary, break it down completely.
And pull out the most practical, the most useful insights, things you can actually, grab onto and use in your own life.
Exactly. We'll guide you through the key messages, highlight those really important nuggets.
Helping connect the dots between the ideas.
So if you're listening and feeling ready to maybe take the reins a bit more.
Become your own captain, so to speak.
Yeah. Become your own captain. Live more for you without constantly feeling swayed by everyone else. Well, then this deep dive is definitely for you. Let's jump in. Where does the material start?
Okay, so chapter 1 really lays the groundwork. It starts with the fundamental question. Why is living for yourself actually important?
Right. Why bother? It can seem easier sometimes to just go with the flow.
It can seem easier, but the core idea here, and it sounds simple, but it's profound, is that you are the basis.
You are the basis. Okay, let's sit with that for a moment. What does that really mean in this context?
It means recognizing that so often we navigate life based on what others expect.
Our family, friends, society in general.
Exactly. All those external pressures. We're constantly looking for approval, for validation, needing that guidance from outside.
And the summary suggests this starts really early, right? This people-pleasing tendency.
It does. It highlights how we're often, in many ways, sort of conditioned to be people pleasers from childhood.
Learning the rules, wanting praise from parents, teachers.
Trying to satisfy others becomes ingrained as the way to be good or accepted.
But the material argues this comes at a cost. This constant focus on others.
A significant cost, yeah. The source basically argues that this kind of dependence, this looking outward all the time, it actively stops us from living what it calls our true lives.
Because if your main driver is external, how can you connect with what's internal?
Precisely. You lose touch with your own authentic self if you're always trying to fit someone else's mold.
And the result of that, if you keep doing that long term.
Well, the material says it often leads to feeling lost, deeply dissatisfied, even, miserable.
Even if things look good on the outside, like you have the successful job, the nice house.
Especially then sometimes. You can have all the external markers of success that others admire, but inside there's this emptiness, a lack of real fulfillment.
Okay, so it's important to clarify what living for yourself isn't then.
Yeah.
It's not about becoming like a selfish hermit.
Not at all. And the summary is very clear on this. It's not about isolation or cutting yourself off.
So what is it about?
It's presented as a conscious choice for independence, for self-reliance, but within the context of your life, your relationships.
Okay.
And here's the key point. Relying more on your own inner compass, your own capabilities, doesn't make you weaker. The source argues it actually makes you fundamentally stronger.
Stronger. That feels counterintuitive. We usually think of strength coming from support, from community.
And community and support are vital. The material doesn't dismiss that at all, but it makes a critical distinction. It argues that your foundational strength, your core resilience, has to come from within. And this leads to what the summary calls maybe the single most important relationship you'll ever have.
Which is?
The relationship you have with yourself.
Wow. Okay. That's a big statement. Why is that relationship considered so central?
The thinking is quite compelling. When you cultivate happiness within yourself, when you have genuine confidence that isn't just propped up by external praise.
When it comes from inside.
Yes. The material suggests your whole perspective on life begins to shift. Things just look better, feel better, because you're seeing them from a place of inner stability.
And this internal stability, this confidence, it changes how you make decisions.
Hugely. The source points out your decisions become more balanced. They're not constantly driven by fear of what others will think.
Or by chasing approval.
Right. Instead, your choices start to actually align with your truth, your values, your passions, what you genuinely want, rather than just doing what others seem to impose on you.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The summary gives a specific example about choosing a career. How does that illustrate this point?
It's a classic situation, really relatable. The material describes someone choosing a career path. Maybe it's medicine, law, something prestigious.
Something parents or society really values.
Exactly. But the person chose it not because they loved it, but primarily to please others or meet some external standard of success.
So from the outside, everyone thinks, wow, they've made it. Impressive job title, good money.
All the external validation is there, but the source looks at the internal reality.
And what's going on inside?
Despite the success others see, this person is likely feeling, well, lost, deeply unsatisfied, because those external rewards just don't fill the gap left by the lack of internal alignment.
It's like they built their life on someone else's blueprint.
That's a great way to put it. And living for yourself in this specific context means having the courage to choose differently.
To choose the path that actually excites you.
Yes, the career that ignites your passion, that feels purposeful to you, even if, and this is the hard part, even if it goes against what your family expected or what society deems successful.
Even if it means maybe less money, at least at first, or a less flashy title.
Right. The core message here is powerful. True happiness, real fulfillment, doesn't come from walking the path someone else paved for you. It comes from walking your own path, the one that resonates deep down.
Okay, so the foundation is clear. You are the basis. Live for yourself means inner-directed independence. Your relationship with yourself is key, and fulfillment is internal. How do we actually start laying this foundation? The summary gives 3 practical tips in this first chapter.
Yeah, these are really actionable starting points. The first one is incredibly simple on the surface, but powerful. Always ask why.
Just why?
Before you make a decision, especially a significant one, or take an action, pause. Ask yourself, why am I actually doing this?
And what does that question reveal?
It's a tool for discernment, the source explains. It helps you start to untangle what you genuinely want versus what's driven by wanting to please someone else or societal pressure or just, old habits. It's a quick check on your real motivation.
A little internal investigation. Okay, that makes sense. What's the second piece of advice?
Define your priorities. And the suggestion is quite literal. Actually, write down a list. What are your personal priorities?
Not my boss's priorities or my partner's, but mine.
Yours. And the key focus when making this list, the material stresses, should be on your happiness, your well-being, your core values, what truly matters to you at your core.
Getting really clear on your non-negotiables.
Exactly. And then the crucial part is ensuring your choices, especially the big life decisions, career, relationships, where you live, actually stem from this internal list. From your priorities, not from external expectations.
So you're consciously choosing based on your own map, not someone else's.
Cut.
And the third tip for getting started.
This one is about planting the seeds of self-reliance through small, everyday actions.
Okay, like what?
Start taking small steps towards independence. Begin by making simple decisions on your own, consciously resisting the urge to immediately ask for someone else's opinion or approval.
Can you give some examples of simple decisions? Things we might not even notice we're outsourcing.
Sure. It could be deciding what movie you want to watch tonight without polling everyone. Or choosing how to spend your Saturday afternoon based purely on what you feel like doing.
Even deciding what project to tackle first at work based on your judgment.
Absolutely. These might seem tiny, almost trivial, but the source argues they're incredibly important.
Why? What's the significance of these small choices?
Because every single time you make a decision based on your own internal compass, however small, without needing that external okay. It's like doing a rep at the gym for your independence muscle.
I like that analogy.
It builds your capacity for independent thought and action. It builds confidence. Brick by brick, these small decisions make it feel more natural, more empowering to rely on yourself.
Okay, so chapter 1 sets the stage. You're the core. Living for yourself is about inner strength. Prioritize yourself, ask why, define priorities, and practice small independent choices. That logically leads to the next question. If I'm going to live for myself, I need to know who myself actually is.
Exactly. And that's the perfect transition into chapter 2, understanding your inner world and knowing yourself.
Okay.
The core idea here is that this whole project of living authentically, of being self-reliant, it absolutely has to be built on a solid foundation of deep self-understanding, self-knowledge.
You can't captain the ship if you don't know the vessel.
Precisely. And the source emphasizes this self-knowledge isn't just optional, like a nice to have. It's presented as a fundamental necessity.
Without it, you're just guessing. Or using someone else's navigation system.
Pretty much. You're flying blind or letting others steer. And this self-knowledge isn't just surface stuff like knowing your favorite color. It goes deeper.
Deeper how? What does it include?
It means really understanding your core values, those non-negotiable principles that guide you. Your passions, what genuinely lights you up, what makes you feel alive, and importantly, your fears.
Our fears. Why is understanding those so crucial?
Because often our fears are what unconsciously drive our people-pleasing behaviors or hold us back from making authentic choices. Understanding them is key to managing them.
Values, passions, fears. It's like taking a personal inventory. The summary calls self-awareness a secret weapon.
It really frames it that way, because without that deep awareness, the material argues, your decisions will almost inevitably stay tangled up with external pressures.
With what others want or what you think they want.
Right. Instead of stemming from what you truly authentically desire, you lack that internal reference point to guide you.
Yeah, how can you live for yourself if you're not even sure who that self is?
Exactly. The source uses this great phrase. It encourages you to become an investigator of your mind.
Ooh, I like that. It sounds active, curious, like you're on a case.
It is active. It's not just passive navel-gazing. It means actively paying attention, monitoring your thoughts, the recurring stories, the assumptions, your feelings, the emotional weather patterns, your daily habits, the automatic routines.
Observing yourself in action. What's the benefit of doing all this self-investigation?
By observing yourself, ideally with some curiosity and non-judgment, you start to see patterns. You understand what truly motivates you from the inside.
Just as importantly.
You start identifying what drains your energy without giving you anything back. With activities, which interactions, which thought loops leave you feeling depleted instead of fulfilled, you spot the leaks.
Okay, so you're gathering intelligence on your own operating system, and this helps you build, what did the summary call it, an internal GPS.
Yes, another really helpful analogy. The idea is that through this consistent self-inquiry, asking what excites me, what are my core values, what am I afraid of, you're actively constructing this inner guidance system.
Calibrated specifically to you.
Exactly. It's your personalized navigation tool. It helps you make choices that are genuinely aligned with who you are. It acts like a filter, helping you resist being swayed by others or falling back into old people-pleasing habits. It keeps pointing you toward your true north.
Let's look at their example about values again. How does not knowing your values mess things up?
Well, the example illustrates that if you're unclear on your core principles, you might easily find yourself agreeing to things or taking on commitments that actually go against what you fundamentally believe in.
And you do it just to avoid conflict or to make someone else happy.
Often, yes. So you might compromise something really important, like your need for honesty or fairness, without even consciously realizing you've done it because you haven't explicitly identified it as a core value. This creates that internal friction.
That feeling of unease or dissatisfaction.
Right. But the flip side, the example shows, is when you do get clear. Let's say you identify honesty as a non-negotiable value for yourself.
Then what happens?
Then, even when faced with a difficult situation, you can make a choice that reflects that value. It might mean having an uncomfortable conversation or saying no to something that feels dishonest.
It might not be the easy choice externally.
It might not be, but internally, because it aligns with your core value, your internal GPS confirms you're on the right track for you. You feel more integrated, more authentic, even if it's hard.
This sounds like really crucial work. So how do we actually do it? How do we become better investigators of our minds and build this GPS? The summary gives 4 practical tips here.
Okay, first up, daily journaling. The recommendation is pretty straightforward. Set aside maybe 10-15 minutes each day.
Just to write.
Just to write down whatever thoughts and feelings come up. The key instruction is no censorship, don't edit, don't judge, just let it flow. It helps get the internal noise out where you can see it.
Like an external hard drive for your brain.
Okay.
What's next?
Mindful meditation. Practicing meditation or even just simple mindfulness exercises helps quiet things down.
Quiet the external noise, the demands, the opinions.
Yes, and also the internal chatter, the anxiety, the self-criticism. It creates space to connect with your deeper, quieter inner voice, that intuition that often gets lost in the shuffle.
Creating stillness to hear yourself. Makes sense. Tip number 3.
Identify values and passions. This is an active exercise. Sit down and actually write lists. What activities genuinely energize you? What principles feel absolutely fundamental to who you are?
So you're not just waiting for epiphanies, you're actively searching.
Exactly. The source really stresses that this clarity, knowing your values, knowing your passions, leads directly to clearer choices and a greater sense of inner peace. When your actions line up with your values, you feel whole.
Okay. And the 4th tip for self-understanding.
Regular self-review. This means setting aside time periodically, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, to look back at your recent experiences.
Not just to judge yourself on successes or failures.
No, the goal is to understand how you operate. What situations triggered strong emotions? How did your mood affect your decisions? What patterns are you noticing in your reactions or habits?
Learning your own instruction manual.
Basically, yes. This regular review significantly boosts your self-awareness. And that increased self-awareness, the source notes, gives you a much greater ability to lead your life consciously, confidently, from a place of knowing yourself, not just reacting to the world.
Okay, building that deep self-knowledge is step 1, which then makes it possible to tackle the next big hurdle, that constant need for external validation. Chapter 3.
Exactly. Chapter 3 dives right into liberation and detachment from external validation. The core message is stark. Freeing yourself from this need isn't just nice, it's fundamental.
Fundamental for what?
For building genuine, resilient self-esteem, and for finding real, lasting inner peace. You can't really have those things if your worth is always dependent on others.
And the summary doesn't sugarcoat what that dependency feels like.
No, it calls seeking external validation exhausting and unfulfilling, which feels right, doesn't it?
Totally. It's like you're constantly performing, hoping for applause.
Right, because it ties your basic sense of being okay, of being valuable, entirely to what other people think or say, and their opinions. They're fickle. They're outside your control.
So your self-worth becomes this constantly moving target based on someone else's mood that day. That is exhausting.
Terribly. And the material touches on where this deep need often comes from.
Like the root causes.
Yeah. Often it stems from underlying feelings of insecurity, a lack of inherent self-worth, and maybe a deep, sometimes unconscious fear of rejection, of being unloved or just inadequate.
If you don't feel solid inside, you look outside for proof that you're okay.
That's the pattern. So the goal of this chapter isn't just understanding the problem, but offering practical strategies to start building your sense of value from the inside.
Building your own internal validation source.
Yes, learning to consciously quiet that noise, the endless opinions, the criticism, the craving for praise, and instead tune into and trust your inner voice.
The same inner voice we talked about connecting with through self-awareness.
The very same. But here, the focus is on its ability to nurture your self-worth. The source describes this voice, when you really listen, as the one that uplifts you, supports you unconditionally.
The one that provides that sense of sufficiency.
Exactly, that quiet, solid knowing deep down that you are inherently valuable, just as you are, without needing an external stamp of approval.
And when your self-esteem truly comes from that inner place.
Then, the material suggests, the desperate need for external validation starts to fade. You don't need constant comparison or applause to feel okay. Your worth isn't something you have to earn from others. It's something you cultivate within.
The social media example they use really hits home today.
It's so relevant. It talks about that pressure to post the perfect picture, the perfect update.
All curated for maximum likes and comments.
Right. That feeling where your satisfaction with the post, maybe even your mood, is directly tied to how many people react positively. It's a very visible form of seeking external validation.
So what does liberation look like in that context?
It means posting what you genuinely like, what you find interesting or meaningful, expressing yourself authentically.
Regardless of the reaction.
Yes. The key shift is where the satisfaction comes from. It comes from the act of self-expression itself, because it felt true to you. Not from the number of likes it gets. That becomes secondary or even irrelevant to your sense of self-worth in that moment.
That's a big shift. Okay, how do we actually get there? How do we break free? The summary offers 7 practical tips for this.
7 concrete actions. First, change negative self-talk. This requires awareness first. Start noticing those critical thoughts you have about yourself.
The I'm not good enough, I messed that up thoughts.
Exactly. And then actively challenge them. Consciously replace them with more positive, encouraging, and realistic statements. It's like retraining your internal narrator.
Becoming your own cheerleader instead of your own critic. What's second?
Talk to yourself like a loved friend. It builds on the first point. Ask yourself, if my best friend was saying these negative things about themselves, what would I say to them?
You'd probably be much kinder, more understanding.
Right. So practice offering that same kindness and support to yourself. Cultivate that compassionate inner voice. Third, set healthy boundaries. This is huge for protecting your energy.
We'll get more into boundaries later, but how does it help with validation?
Because learning to say no and the source stresses, saying no without feeling guilty is a powerful statement that your needs matter. You're not obligated to meet everyone's expectations at the expense of your own well-being.
Saying no reinforces your own value.
It does, which connects to the fourth tip. Define and respect your priorities and needs. Know what truly matters for your health, happiness, and growth, and then make choices that honor those things. Give them the weight they deserve.
Put your own oxygen mask on first, basically.
That's a good way to think about it. Fifth tip, define your own standard of success. Don't let society's narrow definitions, money, status, possessions be your only measuring stick.
Decide what success looks like for me.
Yes, based on your values, your passions, your authentic goals. Make success an internal metric, not just an external one you chase.
Okay, sixth tip.
Reduce exposure to negative opinions. This is about curating your environment. Actively distance yourself from people, social media feeds, or situations that consistently bring you down, criticize you unfairly, or make you feel diminished.
Protect your mental and emotional space.
Exactly. And the seventh tip complements this. Surround yourself with supporters. Seek out and nurture relationships with people who genuinely uplift you, who believe in you, who celebrate your true self, and encourage your journey towards authenticity.
Build a positive feedback loop.
Precisely. People who reinforce your intrinsic worth, not people who make you constantly seek their approval.
Okay, so tackling external validation involves inner work on self-talk, self-definition, plus outer work on boundaries and relationships. Building on this internal strength leads us to Chapter 4, which sounds very practical. Putting self-sufficiency into action.
Yes, Chapter 4 shifts the focus. It's called Building Your Own Pillars and Self-Sufficiency in Action. The core idea is moving beyond just thinking about self-reliance to actually living it.
Making it real in everyday life.
Exactly. It's presented not just as a concept, but as a lifestyle that requires practical steps and daily practice in different areas. It's about embodying that feeling of independence, of being capable and confident.
Confident you can handle things.
Yes, confident you can face challenges without needing to completely depend on others for every little thing.
So translating the inner work into outer capability.
Right. The chapter talks about building pillars of independence. Think of these as core areas where you develop competence.
What kind of pillars are we talking about?
Several key ones. Developing emotional intelligence is one, really understanding and managing your own emotions effectively.
Not being overwhelmed by them.
Right. Another is cultivating the ability to make intelligent decisions on your own, thinking critically, weighing options, and then there's acquiring practical life skills.
Like actual hands-on stuff.
Yes. The kind of knowledge that lets you solve everyday problems yourself, rather than immediately needing to call someone else.
Managing your inner world, making good choices, and handling practical tasks. Sounds comprehensive.
It is. And the chapter also specifically highlights financial independence as a really crucial pillar here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Being financially dependent really limits your freedom.
Hugely. The point the material makes is that the more self-reliant you become across these areas emotionally, practically, financially, the less you actually need that constant external support. You become more capable overall.
And the result is more confidence.
A significant boost in confidence, yes. Confidence in your ability to navigate life successfully on your own terms.
The example they use about home repairs is very relatable.
It really is. The scenario is, a minor issue comes up at home. A leaky faucet, maybe, or a circuit breaker trips.
Things that can feel intimidating if you've never dealt with them.
Right. And the default reaction for many people, especially if they always relied on parents or others, is to immediately pick up the phone and call for help.
Outsource the problem immediately.
Exactly. The material contrasts this with the self-sufficient approach, which is pause. Before calling for rescue, try to figure it out yourself.
Like Google it. Watch a YouTube tutorial.
Yes. Research it, try to understand the problem, maybe even attempt a simple fix if it seems safe and straightforward.
So the point isn't necessarily becoming a master plumber overnight.
No, the point is the attempt. The process of engaging your own problem-solving skills, learning something new, trying it out, that effort itself, the source argues, builds practical skills.
Yeah.
And maybe even more importantly, it builds your confidence. Every time you try, every time you learn how to fix something small, it reinforces that feeling of, I can handle things. You feel more capable in general.
Building that internal sense of competence.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the specific tips for actively building these pillars? There are 4 in this chapter.
First, develop emotional intelligence. This means learning to recognize your emotions when they come up, just noticing them without judgment, and then learning to respond to them consciously and calmly.
Not just reacting automatically.
Right. Handling your emotions in a healthy way leads to more mature decisions and gives you inner strength, especially when facing challenges alone. Second, learn life skills. Actively seek out practical skills that make you more self-reliant.
Like cooking meals from scratch, basic budgeting, maybe changing a flat tire.
Perfect examples. Things that reduce your dependence on others for fundamental needs or common problems. The material uses a great metaphor. Each new skill is like adding a brick to the building of your independence.
I like that image. Building your own fortress of capability brick by brick. What's tip 3?
Practice problem solving. When you hit a snag, consciously resist that immediate urge to ask for help. Stop. Think it through yourself first.
Brainstorm solutions. Do some research.
Yes. Try to work through it independently. Relying on yourself to tackle difficulties strengthens your resilience and trains you to face future challenges with more confidence. You learn you can figure things out.
Okay. And the 4th tip gets back to that crucial pillar you mentioned.
Yes, build a financial safety net. This means learning practical money management, budgeting, tracking expenses, saving consistently for the future, for emergencies.
And again, the focus isn't necessarily on getting rich.
No, the material clarifies. Financial independence here means having the ability to manage your money intelligently and responsibly, taking control.
So you're not constantly worried or overly reliant on others financially.
Exactly. It provides a huge sense of security and autonomy.
Okay, so practical self-sufficiency involves actively working on emotional skills, life skills, problem solving, and finances. Deliberate action. This leads nicely into Chapter 5, which reframes something often seen negatively: solitude.
Right. Chapter 5 takes a really interesting look at solitude. The core idea presented is that spending time alone isn't inherently bad or lonely. In fact, it can be an incredibly powerful tool.
A tool for what?
For personal growth, for deep reflection, for genuine renewal and recharging, and for reconnecting with your true self away from all the external noise.
That definitely goes against the common fear of loneliness, doesn't it?
It really does. We often equate being alone with feeling lonely and see loneliness as something to avoid at all costs. This chapter challenges that view directly. It encourages you to embrace time alone, not as a lack, but as a conscious choice, as a zone of potential personal strength.
Strength. How can being alone make you stronger?
Well, the material points out several benefits. Solitude provides that rare, quiet space needed to really contemplate your thoughts and feelings without interruption, just to be with yourself.
It negates mental clarity.
Yes. It also suggests solitude can boost creativity. When your mind isn't constantly reacting, it has room to wander, make new connections, allow insights to surface.
Makes sense. Less input, more internal processing.
Right. And crucially, planned solitude helps you recharge your energy. It offers a break from the social demands and complexities that can be really draining over time.
So it's like building an inner retreat you can go to.
That's exactly the language the source uses, building an inner sanctuary, a safe, quiet place inside yourself that you know you can return to whenever you need rest, balance, or just connection with your core.
And the summary is careful to distinguish this from unhealthy isolation, right?
What? Absolutely key distinction. This isn't about becoming a recluse or abandoning relationships. Conscious solitude is about intentionally choosing periods of harmony and connection with yourself.
Carving out time specifically to listen to that inner voice.
Precisely. Integrate it into a connected life, not replacing it. The example they give really highlights this perspective shift.
Okay, what's the example?
Instead of feeling bored, restless, or lonely when you find yourself with unstructured time alone, which often leads to mindless scrolling or seeking distraction.
Yeah, trying to fill the void.
Right. The suggestion is to reframe that time. See it as an opportunity. Use it to read that book you've wanted to read. Engage in a hobby you truly love doing just for yourself. Painting, music, gardening.
Or even just sit quietly and think.
Or even just sit quietly and be with your thoughts, as we discussed earlier. Observe them without judgment. The point is, solitude then transforms. It stops being a negative feeling to escape.
And becomes.
It becomes a rich, potentially deep experience, a chance for self-discovery, creativity, or simply peaceful renewal.
Okay, so how do we actually cultivate this positive relationship with solitude? The summary has 3 practical tips.
First, schedule personal time. Literally block it out in your calendar. Treat this time for yourself as seriously as you would any other important appointment.
Make it non-negotiable. Don't just hope it happens.
Exactly. Prioritize it. Second, engage in individual activities. Actively choose and participate in things you enjoy doing alone, not things you do alone only because you have no other option.
Like hiking, visiting a gallery, writing, things where the enjoyment is internal.
Precisely. The source notes that these moments actively strengthen your relationship with yourself. The reward comes from the activity itself. Third, practice self-awareness in solitude.
Meaning?
When you are in these periods of chosen solitude, be fully present with whatever thoughts and feelings arise. And the key instruction again, don't judge them.
Just observe. Accept whatever comes up.
Just observe and accept it as part of your inner landscape in that moment. The summary suggests that solitude, approached this way mindfully, without judgment, can be a powerful gateway to deeper self-understanding and even inner healing.
Wow. Okay, so solitude becomes an active practice for self-connection and renewal. Building on all this self-knowledge, internal validation, practical skills, embracing solitude logically leads to needing to protect this inner work. Chapter 6. Setting boundaries.
Boundaries are absolutely critical. Chapter 6 hammers this home. The core idea is that setting healthy boundaries isn't just a nice to have, it's extremely necessary.
Necessary for what, specifically?
To protect your inner space, to safeguard your independence, to preserve your well-being and energy from being constantly drained by the demands or expectations of others.
Like shields around yourself.
That's the exact metaphor the source uses. Boundaries are like shields protecting your personal fortress, the strong, self-reliant self you're cultivating. They keep you from being pulled off course or depleted.
And this isn't just about big things like someone invading your privacy.
Not at all. The chapter stresses boundaries are needed in all areas: relationships, family, friends, partners, work, managing workload, expectations, your time. It's fundamentally about protecting your time and your energy.
2 incredibly valuable resources. What happens if we don't have good boundaries?
The summary is blunt. It often leads directly to burnout, exhaustion, feeling overwhelmed, resentful, like you're constantly giving and giving with nothing left for yourself.
Because your limits aren't being respected? Or you're not respecting them yourself.
Exactly. So this chapter focuses on the practical skills needed to actually set these boundaries effectively. Learning how to say no clearly, but also kindly.
That balance feels important. Firm, but not aggressive.
It is. And learning how to communicate your boundaries so others understand them. And crucially, what to do when someone inevitably crosses them.
Because just stating a boundary doesn't guarantee it'll be respected.
Unfortunately, no. You have to be prepared to enforce it. Taking appropriate action when boundaries are violated is key. The overall result: you protect your time, conserve your energy, and safeguard your psychological well-being.
Let's look at their example. The friend who always needs help. That's a tough one.
It's super common. Imagine a friend who constantly asks for favors, rides, money, hours of listening, help with their stuff, to the point where it's seriously cutting into your time, your work, or your own needs.
It's so hard to say no in that situation. You feel guilty, you worry about the friendship.
Totally. That people-pleasing instinct kicks in hard. But the source explains that setting a healthy boundary here isn't selfish. It's self-respect. It means being able to say, kindly, but firmly.
Things like,
I care about you, but I can't help with that right now because I have other commitments. Or, I can listen for about 30 minutes, but then I really need to focus on my own work.
you're not rejecting the person, just the specific request or its timing extent.
Exactly. You protect your own resources while still valuing the relationship. It actually models healthier interaction for both people.
Okay, what are the practical steps for doing this? For setting and protecting boundaries? 4 tips here too.
First, know your limits. This goes back to self-awareness. You need to understand yourself well enough to know what feels okay for you and what leaves you feeling drained or resentful. What can you genuinely tolerate and what's just too much?
Tuning into your own capacity.
Yes. Second, say no kindly and clearly. The source repeats this because it's often the hardest part. Practice saying no without excessive apologies or guilt when a request doesn't work for you. Remember, it's a respectful act towards yourself.
giving yourself permission to prioritize.
Right. Third, communicate boundaries firmly. Be clear and direct when you express your limits. Ambiguity makes it easy for boundaries to be ignored or misunderstood. Let people know what you need.
Don't just hint or hope they guess.
No, be explicit. And fourth, enforce boundaries. This is the follow-through. If someone repeatedly ignores or disrespects your stated boundary, you need to take action.
What kind of action?
That depends on the situation, but it might mean restating the boundary more firmly, creating some distance, or even ending interactions that consistently violate your needs. Your well-being comes first. Protecting yourself from burnout is key.
No limits, say no, communicate clearly, enforce. Got it. Protecting the self-reliant self you're building. This whole comprehensive journey brings us to the final chapter, which sounds like it ties it all together as an ongoing process.
Exactly. Chapter 7 is called Living a Life Full of Satisfaction and Independence, and it really emphasizes that self-reliance isn't a final destination. You don't just arrive.
It's not a finished state.
No, the core idea is that it's a continuous journey, an ongoing process of growth, learning, deepening that connection with your true self, and living authentically day by day.
It's the journey itself that matters.
And it's on this journey, the material suggests, that you build that truly honest, profound relationship with yourself, which is the source of deep, lasting inner satisfaction.
This summary calls it an unending adventure.
I like that framing. It captures the dynamic nature. It's explicitly not presented as a quick fix, but as this constant process of learning, adapting, evolving.
So how do we navigate this ongoing adventure well?
The chapter encourages embracing all of it. The good parts, the breakthroughs, yes, but also the challenges, the setbacks, the mistakes you'll inevitably make.
See difficulties as part of the path.
Exactly. View them as opportunities to learn, to adjust, to update your approach based on real experience.
Learning from mistakes seems crucial if it's a continuous journey.
Absolutely central. And this chapter introduces the vital importance of self-compassion, accepting your imperfection.
Being kind to yourself when you mess up.
Yes, showing yourself the same patience and understanding you'd offer a friend, knowing you won't always get it right, and that's okay.
That takes the pressure off perfection.
It does. And the source makes a really powerful point about where true strength lies in this journey. It's not in never failing.
Where is it then?
It's in your ability to persevere, to pick yourself back up after a stumble, learn from it without letting it crush you, and keep moving forward despite the obstacles. That resilience is the strength.
Okay, their example about facing challenges or mistakes illustrates this.
Yes, it suggests that when you hit a roadblock or make a mistake while trying to live more authentically, resist the urge to fall into despair or harsh self-criticism.
That's easy to do.
Very easy. Instead, consciously shift your perspective. See it as data, an opportunity for growth. If you try setting a boundary and it backfires, don't give up on boundaries.
Analyze what happened. Learn from it.
Exactly. What could you do differently next time? Adjust your approach based on that experience. Use the setback to refine your path forward. It's iterative.
Okay, so living this continuous journey requires a certain mindset and ongoing practices. What are the final practical tips from this chapter? 4 again.
First, regular self-reviews. Keep checking in. Are your values, your needs, your dreams still aligned with how you're living? Is your internal GPS still calibrated correctly for where you are now?
Periodic course correction.
Right. Second, continuous learning. Stay curious. Keep learning new things. Skills, knowledge, emotional understanding. Continuous development fuels your independence and adaptability.
Never stop growing.
Pretty much. Third, embrace imperfection. Really internalize this. Accept that being human means making mistakes. Practice being gentle with yourself when you do. Don't let the fear of not being perfect stop you from trying.
Progress over perfection.
Exactly. And fourth, celebrate the journey. Actively appreciate the process itself. Enjoy the small wins, the incremental shifts, the insights gained. Don't wait for some huge milestone to feel good about your progress.
Acknowledge every step.
Yes. Celebrate the effort, the courage, every small step that moves you towards more independence and authentic satisfaction.
Wow. So self-reliance is this rich, ongoing adventure, built on knowing yourself, detaching from external validation, building skills, embracing solitude, setting boundaries, and navigating it all with self-compassion and a learning mindset. That's a really comprehensive picture.
It really is. It moves beyond just the idea of self-reliance to the practical, lived reality of it.
Okay, so the big question for you listening now is, are you ready to start, or maybe continue, your journey? towards living more authentically, more self-reliantly. The summary offers some immediate first steps.
And it wisely suggests starting small, which is key. Don't try to overhaul everything at once.
So important. So, first actionable step. Choose just one chapter's theme to focus on this week. Was it understanding yourself, detaching from validation, building skills, solitude, boundaries? Pick the one that feels most relevant or needed for you right now.
Focus your energy.
Exactly. Second, within that theme, pick just one practical exercise. If it's understanding yourself, maybe commit to 10 minutes of journaling daily. If it's boundaries, identify one small boundary to set this week. Make it tiny and doable.
The minimum effective dose to get started.
Yes. And third, notice what happens. Pay attention to any changes, however small. Celebrate the fact that you took the step that's a win. And learn from any challenges or discomfort that comes up. It's all feedback.
Observe, celebrate, learn. Keep that cycle going.
Right. And this leads us to one final thought for you to ponder. It builds on this idea of listening to your inner voice, but also acknowledges we need connection. So given that self-reliance means strengthening your internal compass, how do you navigate that very real human need for connection, community, even valuable input from others, without losing sight of your own path?
Finding that balance. Self-reliance isn't isolation, right? It's being authentically you within your connections.
Exactly. So maybe think about one interaction this week with a friend, at work, with family. What's one tiny way you can practice honoring your inner voice, your own needs first, even while engaging respectfully? Maybe just taking a breath before answering, checking in with yourself before agreeing.
That pause. Connecting with your internal GPS before reacting.
Just that. And finally, remember what the summary emphasizes. This journey is a continuous process. You will face challenges. You'll probably feel uncomfortable changing old habits. That's not failure, it's growth.
Transformation usually involves some friction.
It does. But the really empowering message here is that every single step you take, no matter how small it feels, brings you closer. Closer to living a life that is truly authentically yours, built on your foundation, guided by your compass.
A life with deep inner satisfaction. It's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into mastering self-reliance and living authentically based on this really insightful material. We hope you found some inspiration, some clarity, and maybe those first concrete steps for your own adventure.
Towards living with more freedom and independence. Until the next deep dive.